I experienced something with my first kid that I never could have been prepared for. Between family, friends, and forums, you learn a lot about what you need to know as a first-time parent. My daughter, Sophia, was an unexpected but welcoming surprise for my husband and I after being told that, due to medical conditions, it would probably be difficult for me to become pregnant. We had tons of help and support from others, but there are just some things you have to learn on your own, such as how to handle certain conversations with your children, or even how you help them grow up and learn as they go into school. When Sophia started school, she was ecstatic. I know a lot of kids are. I was when I was younger too. She couldn't unbuckle her seat fast enough to get out of the car. She told me a nearly minute-by-minute rundown of how her days went, but I loved it. I loved hearing about her day. The good, the bad, the scary for her. She always told me how she felt about everything too. I was happy when we got to do this. I got scared about that, and so on. But when it came time for her to start learning how to read and write, she seemed to struggle a bit. She said the letters were confusing to her. I assumed it could have been the letters that looked similar, like maybe B, P, and D, or maybe some more abstract ones like O, C, and Q. So I told her I would help her, and we got some flashcards and other activities to help. They seemed to help some. She was learning the difference or understanding them, but unlike other assignments or things she did where she got animated after figuring it out, she would just be still and explain that she did it. When I asked her about it, she said that they looked funny to her. I mean, how do you explain to a kid that that's just the way the words are and that you can't change them? Because I didn't know how to. But then, I began to find hints that may explain the confusion for her. One day, while cleaning up Sophia's room, I found some papers that she had colored and scribbled on. She liked to take paper from the printer and draw on it, and we were okay with that. I thought that she showed us all of the work that she had done, but I had never seen these before. But it also wasn't just a picture she drew. These papers had different symbols on them. Symbols I had never seen before. They were drawn in semi-straight lines, sometimes scribbled out and rewritten. Some of them were slightly changed, like a line drawn fixed or something like that. It was just so strange seeing these everywhere. Curiosity got the best of me, of course, and I asked her about it. I asked her what was the picture of, and she quickly corrected me. It's my name. I'm trying to remember how to spell it. She lit up when she told me this, like I was used to seeing her. I giggled about it. Knowing kids can have quite an abstract drawing to only tell you that it was a simple flower, right? But letters were something that she was learning, and I felt that it was appropriate to correct her, to help her with it. I showed her how to spell her name, showing her each individual letter and slowly enunciating it. Once I was finished, her smile slowly faded, looking more faked than anything. But she looked at me confused and insisted that I was wrong. She slowly pointed to the symbols, telling me what each of them were, just as I had done for her. But what she was saying was not English. I didn't know what she was saying. I asked her to explain more, but like an exasperated parent or teacher, she had her hands on her hips and told me that that's just how they were. She then went into talking about something else entirely. After some quick playing and finishing her cleaning, I left the room, with the drawings in hand. All except for one. She asked to keep one of them, saying that she didn't want to forget again. She had several, so I had no issues with letting her keep one. I was just confused by the statement. I put the drawings aside, continued with my day, and, to be honest, forgot about it. While Sophia was at school, I had been on the computer looking for something in my desk when I spotted the drawings again. The curiosity all came rushing back to me, and I wanted to look into it more. One of the coolest things I've learned is how you can draw letters and symbols in a translator, and it can tell you what it is. So, I slowly and meticulously drew these symbols the best I could, and it answered some questions. The symbols my daughter was writing were Arabic. How on earth did she know Arabic, and where could she have learned it? I can't say that we were super careful with what we watched around her. She seemed to really understand the difference between real life and fake movies. We didn't watch anything graphic around her, but we still watched some more than PG-13 kind of things. But even after asking my husband, we could not think of anything we may have watched that had Arabic writing in it, especially to that extent. But based on what I found, Sophia was writing something to the effect of AI something AN. I don't know if I was writing something wrong or if Sophia did, but it seemed to kind of break in the middle. But what I was putting was definitely those letters. When Sophia returned home that afternoon, I asked her about it. I showed her one of the papers that I had taken from her room a few days prior. I pointed to them, and I asked her again to help me with the letters. I spelled it out like I did above in English, but she was pronouncing them in Arabic. In between both of us confusing each other, I was finally able to get her to break it apart more, and I could see the middle letter that I was missing. It was a D. So now I had AIDAN. I was trying to pronounce it to her, and she laughed and said, "No, Nadia." She wrote it backwards? I tried to mention this, but she again laughed and said no, that I was in fact wrong, and sounded it out, pointing from right to left. Again, I let it go, telling her that she could go play while I continued to look into the name. But once I put the symbols in, as Sophia explained, sure enough, it read back to me as Nadia. Sophia was definitely writing in Arabic, but the mystery still remained on how she knew this. I again left it alone that night after showing my husband what I learned. He was just as astounded by it as I was. When I was getting Sophia ready for bed, I brought it up one more time. I mentioned the name Nadia. She confirmed it was her name. When I told her that her name was actually Sophia Grace, she agreed, but said Nadia was her original name. I asked her if she knew Arabic, since that was how she wrote it. And she smiled and agreed, saying English was new and different to her, but that she liked it. That definitely could explain why it was harder for her to start learning how to read and write. It was a completely different language for her, and it was written from left to right. I then asked her about her name, about her knowing Arabic, and she happily explained more. She explained the home she used to live in. She explained how it was always hot, and the homemade bread that her mother would make. She even said that she was sad that it was over because she missed her mother, but she knew that she had to go, that God had told her it was time. She explained it like how a parent would tell her it was time to go home. I asked her how that happened, how she had talked to God, and she got quiet, claiming she couldn't remember. The change in her mood was pretty noticeable, and what she told me already was not something I would have ever expected in my life. I certainly didn't want her to recall something traumatic, so I wasn't going to push it. I'd heard stories about past lives before, but it was never talked about when I was a kid, as it wasn't something my family believed in. I looked into it a lot more after Sophia's recollection. If I was skeptical at all before, I definitely wasn't afterwards. A past life was the only explanation that I could come up with. If she just heard one word or phrase, maybe from someone or a movie or show, I could explain that away. Especially if where she heard it from also included the story of a young girl with her mom. But the fact that she could pronounce the symbols correctly, and that she wrote them from right to left, and later she could even write more letters. She was trying to write out the whole alphabet, I believe. I just couldn't explain that. She had to have learned that, or known that from something deeper. And the change in her demeanor when I mentioned meeting God, that nearly gave me the chills. I was convinced. I didn't want to press the matter, since on any given day it didn't seem to cause her any distress. She didn't have nightmares, and the most difficult part for her just seemed to be learning how to read and write English. So, there seemed to be no reason for us to do anything about it. Sophia is 14 now, and she doesn't talk about Nadia anymore. And she also doesn't write nor speak Arabic. I thought it would be really cool to learn it with her and maybe look into her life, possibly, but I think I'm happy just knowing that we both got to share this experience. So, I want to start off the story by mentioning that I have dissociative identity disorder. My name is Ms., and I'm the only one in my system who is experiencing something like this. Basically, I can remember living an entire life up to the point of being 22 years old that I never actually lived. I have pretty severe memory loss and a strong feeling of disconnection from the life that I'm living now, which makes these fake memories feel a lot more vivid and real to me. And I'm not sure if this implies anything, but all of my memories from my current life are in third person, while the memories from my past life are in first person. So, this entire situation can be explained by me having DID, since fake memories, or pseudo-memories, are somewhat common with it. But it's always felt like something more than that, and I figured you all would find it interesting either way. Anyway, I'll just summarize all of these memories to the best of my ability. I grew up in a trailer park somewhere in the Midwest. My mother was an alcoholic, and my father was out of the picture. The town was very small and rural, the kind of town you drive past on a road trip and don't think twice about. I can picture it clearly in my mind. Badly maintained roads with no lines or sidewalks, ancient buildings with cracked bricks and dusty windows. I can even remember the smell of motor oil and dirt. I lived in that town until I was 12, when my mother and I moved into a tiny apartment in a city a few hours away. I found a group of friends at school who stuck with me until I was in my 20s. The oldest was Mac, who was 2 or 3 years older than me. He always wore a red beanie and tucked his shirt into his jeans. He was pretty tall, with curly reddish-brown hair and stubble. I remember having a major crush on him for a few years, and eventually losing interest when I was 20. Then there was Landon, who also went by Lauren sometimes. She was only a few months older than me, but she acted like I was 5 years younger than her. She had long, dirty blonde hair, and often wore a turquoise flannel. She was pretty wild and liked to mess with us, but was super protective of me and her younger brother. Her younger brother was named Conifer, and he was a year or two younger than I was. He was really timid and seemed uncomfortable a lot of the time, but I think he hung out with us because he wanted to fit in somewhere. I didn't mind having him around, but I did worry about him sometimes. He was pretty short and scrawny, like a strong gust of wind could take him out. His hair was short and pretty messy. Basically, he looked like one of those small dogs that are permanently disheveled and just kind of pathetic. I remember hanging out with this group a lot, mostly skateboarding around the bad side of town late at night, sneaking into abandoned buildings, and doing drugs. Basically getting into trouble wherever we could find it. There are 2 memories that feel the most important to me, so I'll explain those in detail. The first started out pretty typically, with us drunk out of our minds and skating around town in the middle of the night. I was around 16. At one point, a cop car started following us, and being stupid teenagers, we kept going and trying to lose them. The wheel of my skateboard caught a rock, and I wiped out. I was arrested, but my friends just kept on skating and left me behind. I remember the feeling of being handcuffed and the pain in my chest when I was slammed against the cold metal of the police car. I ended up only spending a night in jail, and was released with a warning. Obviously, I was pissed that my friends didn't have my back, but I knew they didn't really have a choice. I forgave them pretty quickly. Another time, we were hanging out at our usual spot, the roof of an abandoned apartment complex downtown. I was probably around 19 or so. We were all pretty high, and we decided to play spin the bottle. At one point, it landed between me and Mac. I still had a pretty big crush on him at this point. And I know it sounds corny, but man, that was probably the best moment of my life. He pretended to be disgusted, wiping off his face in an exaggerated manner, and yelling about how gross it was. I tried to play it off in a similar manner, but I'm not sure how well I did. These memories stop very abruptly, and I can't remember anything past the point where I turned 22. Currently, I am 22, though I am in a body that is not. I feel like I was taken from my real life and thrown into this one, and the memories stop when I was transported. I miss the people in my memories as if they were real, and writing this felt like recounting actual events to me. I have this overwhelming feeling that I'm stuck in the wrong universe, and that I was put here by mistake. I've entertained the idea that this is kind of like a second chance for me, since I messed up a lot in my past life, and I do have more opportunities here. But honestly, I'm not really sure what to think. I could interpret it any way that I wanted, and it wouldn't make much of a difference. I've read up on similar experiences, like the Reddit lamp guy, if you know, you know, and I do find a lot of comfort in knowing that I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. If anyone listening has a similar story, I encourage you to share it. Thanks for taking the time to read this out, Raven. I hope your day has been a good one. And thank you for allowing me to read it. I am the father of two wonderful and smart boys that are 3 years apart. Brayden was the oldest, Damien the youngest. Brayden, being our first, we had to learn a lot of things as a first-time parent. And while there were some rough moments, we got through it. And he's a very happy and healthy boy. We wanted another kid close to Brayden's age, so we tried for a second without any complications. Brayden was also born healthy, and my wife had no other complications. Life seemed to be as normal as one would expect for a small family, and I was thankful for what we had. So, one summer, we were trying to make plans for a family vacation, but we wanted to do something different, and maybe something that would save us some money. So we decided to go camping. My parents had some old tents, one that would be big enough for the 4 of us. The boys were 6 and 9 at the time. We could get together some food that would go well in a cooler, cook over a fire, and even go fishing. Brayden had been fishing with me before, but Damien hadn't, so I thought it would be a fun experience for us all. One day, we were all having dinner and my wife mentioned something about the campgrounds we'd been looking at some point. Damien stopped eating. We didn't notice until he was nearly whimpering and holding back tears. We stopped and my wife asked what was wrong, thinking maybe he bit his tongue or something. We were eating spaghetti, which is one of his favorites, so we knew that it wasn't the meal. He then started crying, and saying that he doesn't like camping and didn't want to go. We were confused because he had never gone camping. Neither of our boys had. So how could he not like it? How could he even know what camping was? We did our best to calm him down and tried to explain what we meant. We just said we were going to be spending the night in the woods, in a tent. I even took him to the garage and showed him the tent. I did my best to hold it up so he could see it and see where we would be sleeping. It made him smile and he seemed to like the idea, so it calmed him down. We thought maybe it was just a new thing and maybe he wasn't good with change, or with things he wasn't familiar with. We were maybe just a few days away from going on our trip now, and with all of us in the living room, I mentioned something about camping again. And once again, Damien had a breakdown. He grabbed onto my wife's leg and pleaded with her not to take him. "No, I don't want to go back to the camps. I'm sorry. I don't like the camps. I don't want to go." Just non-stop pleading with fear in his eyes. I had never seen this from him before. My wife hugged him and tried to calm him down again, and we reminded him of what we were talking about the week or two prior. Once we got him calmed down, I wanted to know where this was coming from. Why was he so terrified? I asked Damien why he was so afraid of camping, as he had never gone before. I asked if someone told him something, but I wasn't expecting his response. He explained that he had gotten hurt in the camps before, and he didn't want to get hurt again. We were still just as puzzled. He had never been camping, so how could he have gotten hurt? So I asked him again about it, to explain when he went camping, and what he told me, it gave me the chills. I was a different kid. I couldn't wear my favorite blue dress. The mean man called them lager, and pushed me in with my old mommy. I was hungry and I cried a lot. I got really sick and I died. I don't want to die again. I don't want to go to the lager. I was stunned. What on earth was my young son talking about? Dying? Lager? I didn't understand any of it at first. I comforted him again and we explained that camping was nothing like what he was describing. I told him it was a vacation outside. I explained that we would have plenty of food. He would be safe and that we would all be together. He would never be alone. It seemed to comfort him again, and from then on, we just avoided using the term camping. We just referred to it as vacationing or going into the woods, or even tenting. Anything but that word. I just assumed that maybe he saw something somewhere on TV and that he would soon forget about it. Maybe even after we went camping. But then my wife brought up a crazy revelation. She had looked up the word Damien was using. Lager. Lager. I just thought it was a beer, which was still weird that my young son would use the word because neither of us drank beer. But she said that it had a different meaning. Lager was a shortened version of the word camp in German. Those kind of camps. My son was talking about something he should know nothing about, so why was he talking about dying in one? I finally started to figure it out, with my wife nearly spelling it out for me. It seemed our son was having memories or flashbacks. Memories of being in a German camp and dying in it. I haven't mentioned this yet, but Damien held his arm in a particular way whenever he was nervous. He would hold his inner arm with his right hand, like he was covering it with his palm. He had a birthmark there, so we just thought he was trying to cover it up. Maybe he was self-conscious about it. But it appeared to have a bigger meaning to him. So we sat Damien down the night before our trip, just the three of us, and we talked to him about it. I asked him to tell me about everything he remembered. And to my surprise, he remembered a lot. He mentioned how he was there for a while. He mentioned being sick again. How many people were there, and how his mom sang to him on his last day alive. He even touched his left arm in the same place, and mentioned that his number used to be there. It was truly unbelievable. You learn about that stuff in school over time, but to hear things from my little boy, things that he shouldn't know anything about, was incredible and heartbreaking. All we could do was explain to him that what he remembers about camps was nothing like actually camping. We told him about all the fun things we would do out there and that it would be together, the four of us. Really just sitting him down and talking him through it seemed to help him understand and trust us more that it was about fun, not what he was remembering. When we actually did go camping, Damien loved it. He loved the tent. He even loved the idea of the sleeping bags. He loved the campfire and making s'mores, even though the fire did make him nervous at first. And he loved fishing. He seemed to really have a great time and thanked us when we were leaving, with tears in his eyes. From then on, we were careful with our wording, but also didn't bring up his memories unless he wanted to talk about them. At one point, he said that he couldn't remember his name, but that he thought it started with an L. Over time, he's talked about it less and less, and nowadays he rarely mentions it. I feel like going camping did give him the opportunity to move on, and maybe one day, he will no longer be tormented by those awful memories at all. Hello everyone. I want to talk about some things from my past life that have impacted my current life. My mom and I are spiritual, and she contacted the spirit of my best friend yesterday when I was having a mental breakdown. He's from my past life as a Vietnam soldier. I got to know him since I was a young child, and we were best friends. I can vaguely remember that his name was Damien or something. I basically grew up with him, and his family treated me as I was one of them. Very nice family at that time. But once the Vietnam War started, things took a turn. During our deployment, I was very paranoid of being ambushed by the Vietnamese, so I slept with a gun in my hands. Due to all the mental issues going on at that time in the dark environment, I accidentally shot my best friend, because I heard someone walking towards me in an odd way. I was devastated, and I turned bat-crap insane after that. I was no longer suitable for duty, so they sent me home. I was full of regret, shame, grief. People around me were treating me harshly because we veterans, quote-unquote, failed to win the war. And the family members of my best friend even placed a curse on me out of anger and resentment. The curse that I would never be happy and fulfilled again. This curse has haunted me into the current life that I've been reincarnated into. I always asked myself why I feel like I'm not worth it, or why the things in my life happened the way they did. Now I feel like the pieces of the puzzle are fitting together. The purpose of my current life is to lift the curse, and become mentally strong again. I can finally have peace with myself now, which I wasn't able to achieve with psychotherapy before. Moral of the story? Unresolved mental issues and curses can haunt you into your next life. Be sure to cope with them, and be open-minded or disciplined to meditation. This way you gain insight about previous lives, and you can prevent yourself from making the same mistakes this time. I had recurring dreams when I was 5 years old. I even wonder if it was a dream because it's like I actually lived it. It took me years to try and understand it. I was a young Asian woman who lived on a boat. I had to take a smaller boat to get my father to the mainland to see a doctor because he was very sick and coughing. He was so weak. He was laying down in the boat, and I knew that he would probably die that night. I lived my life on the water, and operating a boat was second nature to me. I remember being torn that I couldn't get the boat there fast enough, and thought that I could be free when and if he did pass. I remember feeling shameful for that thought. I was so young, maybe 17 or 18. The waters were dark and calm, and a big full moon was in view, and a gentle warm breeze combed my hair. I was in angst of my father dying, and yet giddy at the impending freedom. A mix of emotions for sure at the sudden turn of events. It was so real. I remember the sights and sounds, the emotions, the conflict within myself. How can a 5-year-old child conjure up that repeatedly in a dream? Next, I had dreams of an American soldier who gave me a beautiful scarf, and we were to be married later. I was born in 1957, well after all the world wars. I keep wondering how I could have known details about such mature, complex emotions and circumstances as a young woman in the 30s or 40s. The dreams were too vivid, too detailed, and I know that I once lived this. My father died before we got to the shore, and I cried. I worked in a children's hospital in my town and took blood samples from neonatal intensive care, older kids, all the way from birth to 17. Most kids didn't like to give blood by using a tiny needle and always preferred a finger stick. Yet the reality was that they hurt more. One day I entered the room of a super cute boy that I think was 3. His parents had both stayed the night, and they moved aside at a distance to allow me to work. Kids need a parental transference so they behave, and this way he would listen to me better. But immediately in my heart, I knew that he was a man, not a boy of 3, and an army man. I can't explain any of this. I said hello and told him why I was there, and he stuck out his arm like a little man. I said, "You are a man, not a little boy, huh?" His parents exchanged glances, and I said, "Like an army man." And he said, "I was an army man." I saw them look at one another again and then back at our exchange. I quickly used a butterfly needle, which is the smallest I could without humiliating the blood. That's ruining it by breaking up the cells in too small of a needle. I thanked him and asked him what army he was in. "Well, the American Army, of course," he said proudly. His dad spoke now after they'd witnessed our strange interaction with one another. "He's been telling us all about being in the army since he began talking," he confided. "So many patient interactions have made me understand that people do reincarnate. Like my own memory. I know what things are, or songs that played in the 1920s forward. The image of the 20s seems to be always with me somehow. I think of people we love, who feel so familiar, and think, there's really a richer past than we can ever know." So that, my friends, was another collection of some past life stories. Interesting stories here. Actually had one from Reddit on this list, which was different. Not one I normally have. Normally these don't come from Reddit. I've been trying to find some good Reddit stories on these. And I think I have, so maybe next time there will be more. But this was the only one that responded to me in time for this one, so yeah. Some interesting stories, as always. Past life stories are always bizarre. I guess subset of paranormal or supernatural, however you want to look at it. Not really sure what to say about them, other than, like I said, they always have this bizarre air about them that it's just odd, right? Not really creepy, maybe a little creepy, but definitely chilling and strange. Yeah, I don't know, good stories. Hopefully you all enjoyed them as I did. That would be great. If you did enjoy them, if you didn't, I'm sorry. Maybe you'll enjoy the next one. Yeah. If you did enjoy the stories, please consider hitting that thumbs up button, as it helps quite a bit. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider doing that whole subscribe thing that some of you guys do, if you liked the channels. I know a lot of you are subscribed already, so if you subscribe again, you'll unsubscribe, and I don't think you want that. I don't want that. So hopefully you don't want that either. You can also leave me a comment down below, letting me know your thoughts on the video, on me, on the channel, how things are going, how things aren't going. How's your weekend? Yeah. Anything. Comment section is open for the most part. Yeah, you can also do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel, and never expected but always appreciated. Or join Patreon memberships, get early access to content like this and other things, depending on how you want to sign up and what you sign up for. All that said, friends, hope you're having a beautiful weekend. I hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love. And of course, sleep well.